Yeah, people will ask, like, well, how do you have this success? And I'm like, honestly, because I'm a combat decorated Marine that was a cop in a big city, and I'm a man, and I just talk about feelings. And people are like, what? And that's all it is. But like, yeah, I imagine our message is very much similar. But because I'm a guy saying it, people are just like so taken aback by it. And I believe it. And also, I've lived it, right? This isn't theorized out of a textbook. It's like, no, no, I've walked the hard life and sexual abuse, physical abuse as a kid, unhoused at 15, suicidal, combat, all this stuff. And when people hear the story, they're like, whoa, like, man, and now you're giving me all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, because I've done the work. Like I didn't want any of those things to happen, but now I'm like, man, I'm so grateful that these horrible things happen to me because now it allows me to step on any stage in front of any room and connect with people on a very deep level. And there's powerful, powerful connection with people when we're willing to share our stories. And so, yeah, I think it's our superpower, which is why I love podcasts.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about mental health in public safety. I'm delighted to welcome Joe Smarro. Joe is a decorated combat veteran, former police officer, #1 best-selling author, and the founder and CEO of Solution Point. You can reach Joe at his website, joesmarro.com and solutionpointplus.com, and I'll include those links in the show notes. Welcome, Joe. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Thank you, Linda. Super excited to be here and to chat with you and your audience.
Thank you. And I so appreciate what it is that you're doing. And I enjoyed checking out your website and reading about you and the amazing things that you've done. And there was one line that stuck out to me, and I'm going to quote it. It said, "His big, hairy, audacious goal is to eradicate suicide among all first responders, starting in law enforcement." So is it okay if you kind of help make us aware of this problem of suicide among our first responders?
Yeah, and I will say, Linda, that we have evolved as a company as well to now say we want to eradicate suicide amongst our client professions because even our term of first responder has evolved. We are now providing training in the public transit space, healthcare. And so for me, it really comes down to looking back on my life. My first suicidal thought was at 15 years old. And then sadly, I was surrounded by it in the Marine Corps. And then when I got on the San Antonio Police Department, there were a handful of suicides throughout my time on the department. And then when I worked on the mental health unit, it was just something that was pretty frequent throughout the city of San Antonio, but then even in policing. And in learning about these stories and these issues and what drives somebody to that place, again, a place that was all too familiar for me, I really believe in my heart that this is preventable. Now, I will say that there's an asterisk here. Um, I've met some people that were older and given a terminal diagnosis of some aggressive stage 4 cancer, and that was the choice they made. And while I have zero judgment in me of anybody, I can get to a level of, I want to say, appreciation or acceptance that, like, okay, that to me, you know what's coming, you make that choice, like that's between you and you. But that isn't the majority. The majority of first responders, especially that choose to take their own life, are doing it almost always circumstantially based on impulse because of something that's happening in the moment or a fear of something that's going to happen in the moment. Now, I want to go deeper on this because, and I'm kind of telling my secrets here, but when I do a keynote, every time I do a keynote to a group of first responders, I walk out on the stage after my intro and I take center stage. I look out at the audience and I open up with this line, which is, what if I told you that I have found the #1 reason why a first responder takes their own life? Would that be interesting?
Yes.
And then I totally avoid and I don't answer it for a while. And then I do my talk and I go back to it. But Linda, here's what it comes down to for me is, and I'm not minimizing this, but in my opinion, a first responder would rather put a gun in their mouth and pull the trigger. More than 85% of them go that way. They would rather put a gun in their mouth and pull the trigger than feel an emotion. And that's really what it comes down to. And so for me, it's like, well, if I'm in the space of prevention, how can I get them to a place of prevention? Well, by leveling up their EQ. Um, I was speaking in 2019 at a suicide prevention symposium at NYPD, and there were 350 leaders from around the world there. And one of the former commissioners of Baltimore PD stands up and he says, what we're finding is a lot of our suicides are tied to relationship issues. And I wanted to stand up and run through a wall and say, listen, that's a distraction. Yes, the relationship may have been toxic. The relationship may have been the thing that just was the catalyst that created this outcome. But why was that first responder in a toxic relationship in the first place? Because they have massive insecurities. They have a lot of trauma unprocessed. And now they're welcoming people into their small circle that are going to validate their wounds that they haven't healed. And so for me, it's much deeper than just saying, well, this was a relationship issue. Well, no, the relationship issue exists because the officer already has issues that they haven't dealt with. And so there's a lot of deep work that needs to go into this, a lot of trauma processing and understanding that has to go with this. And there are no police departments, in my experience, that are actually screening for any of this. An MMPI is not a good, like, yeah, you're not a psychopath. That's great. You're not wetting the bed at 25. Okay. But we're not actually learning about the historical trauma patterns or stories of a lot of these people. And then they get into these hard professions where they're saturated in human suffering. And then it's compounding trauma on compounding trauma. And then we get into these toxic relationships. And then ultimately we end up addicted to pornography, opiates, alcohol. We get caught. Something bad happens. Our career is now threatened. And then that's where this like impulse of suicide becomes the better option. And so that's the thing that as a CEO of Solution Point Plus, our training really works hard to try to address these concepts.
That is fantastic. So, as I'm listening to you, the answer is it is exactly the same problem that every other human on this planet faces. And
Yes.
that is we have trauma, all of us. And trauma doesn't necessarily mean what people think it is. When you're a first responder, it means exactly what you think it is. It is some big, massive event. But as a child, it could be something simpler, something smaller. We can be just as wounded with 1,000 tiny cuts as we can be with one huge one. And yet, if we don't choose to heal from these, then we carry them with us throughout our life. And it sounds like the difference between just anybody on the street and a first responder is then it is compounded with these massive, consistent traumas where it makes whatever it is you're dealing with forefront in your mind frequently,
Yeah.
creating issues. Okay. And isn't it interesting when you said that most of them would prefer to put a gun in their mouth and finish it than feel an emotion? And that is what is the scarier of these two issues? And sometimes we think, oh, feeling your emotion, that's a touchy-feely whatever thing.
Right.
And yet it is scarier than dealing with these huge traumatic events of rushing in and saving someone or intervening with a problem. That's interesting.
Well, and because to that point, Linda, responding to these horrific situations, you know, an active shooter event, domestic violences, any of these like hot calls in progress, that's external performance. That is so much easier to do than to go internal and do the hard work. And, to your point that you were making, is like, yes, why is it that, isn't it interesting, as you said, that somebody would rather die by suicide than feel any emotion? And to take that even deeper, it's because again, I'm afraid people hear that and they're going to either simplify it or think that I'm minimizing this. And I assure you, I'm not. For those that don't know me, this is like my passion in my life work is to get to the prevention side of this. But in the effort to avoid feeling something, right? What we call numbing, buffering, and avoiding, because I don't want to feel something, I will start to develop maladaptive coping strategies. And in my experience of hospitalizing a lot of first responders, there's patterns, and I would say that all people do something. We all have a drug, a vice, something that we go to when we feel flooded, when we feel scared, nervous, anxious. Um, and it really comes down to food and alcohol overconsumption. When we are feeling anxious or scared or nervous or afraid, we will eat and overeat. And that's an easier thing to do than to sit in our feelings and ask ourselves those hard questions. Drinking, same thing. We'll overconsume alcohol because that is a suppressant and it allows us to not have to feel anything. Um, Sex, extramarital affairs within the same relationship, pornography addiction, very common because again, you're getting that dopamine release. And so the more of it you can get, the more dopamine you're dumping, the less you're having to feel and experience. Um, Screens, right? More dopamine, Netflix, Instagram, TikTok, just doom scrolling your phone, watching TV, just numbing out with screens in your face all the time. That's another classic. And then even the gym, right? I've met a lot of first responders that have the insight and the awareness to know that when I'm mentally at my lowest point, I'm in my best physical shape. But when I am at my mentally healthiest point, I'm not in such good physical shape because I'm not using the gym as an avoidant or distraction from having to feel something, insecurity, fear, whatever it is. And so that's the deeper part of this is that it's not just so simple of like, no, it's not that I don't want to feel a feeling. It's just I would rather die. Well, no, you've gotten to that place because of the pattern of it could be months, it could be years of avoiding your feelings. Now this feeling is like so heavy and so persistent that you start to believe that it's overwhelming, that you're not going to be able to actually process it or get through it. And it's so scary and foreign that the idea that this guarantee is if I just kill myself, that I don't have to worry about this ever again. And we've all heard it, but right, it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem because here's the good news for anyone listening to this. You have survived 100% of the problems you've had previous to this moment. And in those moments, in your darkest days, when you thought this will never pass, this is the worst thing ever, this is never going to get better, you can look back on that right now and say, everything changed, right? Maybe not the way you wanted it to, but you survived it. And sometimes it really is just a waiting game and turning days into not just hours or minutes, but seconds. And how can I just survive the next 30 seconds and become like aggressively aware of what is happening right now in this moment and root yourself in truth instead of allowing the anxious mind to take over in future tripping or allowing the depressed mind to take over in past dwelling. But just ask yourself right now, where am I? What is true in this moment? I am standing here. I'm alive. I'm breathing. I have, freedom of thinking. I have freedom of choice and really allowing yourself to like ground yourself in the moment. To me, that is like the best real solution in the moment when suicidality becomes an acute crisis because so often people are just so afraid of the future, so angry or stuck about the past. And it's like, what is true in this moment? And if we can just get to that moment, then maybe there's enough time that can pass where you'll have a new thought or an idea or hope. Because to me, that is the cure of suicidality is hope. I think when people choose to take their life, it's because they've lost all hope. And so for anyone out there that's dealing with this or helping people deal with this, all we have to do is try to find something to provide hope for them.
That's why we're here. That is
Right.
my goal, my joy, my passion, my mission is to help people feel hope. And some people are afraid of hope because hope, if you don't get what you want, it can lead to disappointment or feelings of helplessness. But what we want to be able to share is hope that you have more power than you realize. Hope by giving you the resources that you need so that you can overcome whatever challenge is in front of you. We want to empower people. Now, as you're talking about this, and the situation is so real, and it's the same for everyone. I mean, we're focusing on first responders, we're focusing on those who have a life of service, but the story is the same for everyone. And I recently learned about a threat assessment theory, and they said that the difference between looking at a problem and seeing it as a challenge versus seeing it as a threat is if we feel that we have the resources to deal with it. If something hard comes up and I have the resources to deal with it, then it's a challenge. It's kind of like going to the gym. It makes you stronger. When we have that hard thing and we don't feel like we have the resources, then that hopelessness sets in, that helplessness, that I can't do anything about this. And that is, I know what you're trying to prevent by saying, guys, there's a set of tools. There are things that you can do. And it's human nature when something hard comes that we want to avoid it, we want to numb it. And I loved how you brought in addictions are such common, that's such a
Mm.
common way to direct. It's, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to feel this. I'm going to numb it through food, through alcohol, through whatever. I'm going to avoid it. I'm going to watch movies. I'm going to whatever it might be. Scrolling. I know social media is a common one too. But when we do these things and we do them because they
Mm.
work in, I'm not feeling that thing that I don't want to feel. And yet they're making us weaker because we don't have the skill set to actually deal with the problem.
Yeah, the assessment theory is fascinating. And um, what I was picking up when you were talking about that is it's very similar to like a growth mindset of seeking challenges, seeing any failure as like a learning lesson instead of like a I'm not good enough. And it's a reframe. But the good news is that even if you get to that place where you're like, okay, I'm not resourced for this, I would challenge that thought because like all that is a thought that was created at a very early age, most likely. And to Linda's point, like you have reinforced that thought so many times and proven it to yourself to be true. But here's the good news that like is actually factual. It's not even an opinion, is that unless you like have a, if you have a significant like cognitive development issue or, something like that. But for most people, anytime you believe yourself not to be resourced to deal with something, it's just an old pattern thought. And the good news is that every skill that you need, every healing solution is already inside of you. Like when you understand the power of your brain and how it works, and again, I'm not saying you have to be a neuroscientist or anything, but it is 2025. The internet is relatively cheap. And I used to say the only thing you needed to succeed in life was a library card and an internet connection. You don't even need a library card anymore. With AI being here as it is, libraries are sadly going to become obsolete eventually because AI is taken over. So you can learn anything. But the problem is that we become habitual creatures very early. And Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about how 95% of our lives is a series of automated habitual routines. And those aren't always good routines, right? If we're just vegging out and, raiding the pantry and watching too much TV and doing these things that, again, help us not have to feel, those are just habits that we've created. And yeah, it's going to be harder to overcome. But everything you've ever needed to live your greatest life is already inside of you, all of it. It's just a matter of unlearning a lot of the things that you learned. Challenge your old belief systems. Ask yourself the hard questions like why? Why do I believe what I believe? Why do I feel these things I feel? When did they get placed here? And yes, I cannot stress enough the importance of professional help. And I'm a huge advocate of various therapists and modalities that exist, especially if there's like real trauma to work through. Professional help is great. And all a good therapist is going to do is help you realize that all of the answers are already inside of you. And so it's just having like professional navigation is really what it is. So, yeah, I love this conversation, Linda. And who's your audience anyway? I'm curious, like who's listening to your show?
Excellent question. I hope it is anybody who wants to be better. Anybody. So it's inspiration for a better life. So who wants a better
Beautiful.
life? I do. I do.
Yeah.
And it can start from anywhere. So I can say, wow, I have a great life and I want it to keep going and I want it to be
Mhm.
better. Or it can be anywhere on the spectrum. It could be, my life stinks. I feel miserable and I
Right.
want a better life. So wherever we are, there's room for growth and there's room for improvement. And I agree 100%. The answers are inside of us. The
Yeah.
power is inside of us. And a lot of what we're doing is helping people to become awake and aware to the power that they already have access to.
Right.
And I appreciate that you mentioned that 95% of our actions are automated, and our brain is amazing. It is designed that way. About 95% of our brain activity is unconscious. So it makes perfect sense that we're running on autopilot most of the time. And we got to tap into thinking a little bit, making a few course corrections
Right.
so that we
Yeah.
can go ahead and be automatic in ways that benefit us.
Yeah, I challenge people of what if we took that 5% and stretched it to like 15 or 20%? Because for sure we're going to do a bunch of things habitually and it's just part of life, the way the systems and structure is set up around it. But instead of me, when I learned that, I was like, well, that's offensive to me. I refuse to allow my life to be a carbon copy. And in a simple way to measure this is just look at how closely is tomorrow going to mirror yesterday? And is next week like last week? And next month like last month? And if it's like, yeah, it's pretty much the same all the time, that's your evidence. So now it's like in my free time, when I do have those little pockets of moments, maybe I'm not going to do the same thing I always do. Maybe I know I love this show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m., but instead, I'm actually going to go for a walk, something I would normally never do. And it's about challenging yourself to step outside of your comfort zone, because I do think that you learn the most about yourself when you're in play and in discovery. And when you're seeking out those uncomfortable moments, you're going to learn the most about yourself. But it really is about developing your own resilience, knowing that life is 50-50, it's undefeated, it's always going to win. We are going to die. People we love are going to do weird things that we don't like. We're going to be disappointed. Like it's just life, right? It's on repeat. And so what I say is, how do we maximize the human experience? And for me, like how I maximize it is I take that 5% of autonomy that I learned about. And now I'm like, no, I want to stretch this to 25%. And I'm going to try to do something I wouldn't normally do. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to, read a book. I'm going to, go hiking, things I would normally never do because I want to just learn about myself. And I refuse to accept the fact that like, this is just who I am and I just am what I am and nothing changes. No, like from a neuroplastic level to our brain and the neuroplasticity all the way to behaviorally, it's never too late. You can change your behaviors and patterns into your 90s, and you can choose to do new behaviors anytime you choose to do new behaviors. And so to me, that's a beautiful thing. Like that's the real essence of freedom that we have. And I just wish more people would understand that and exercise it.
And that's why we're having this conversation, is to
That's
help
right.
people become aware. I love that you just gave us an action step. As we're talking about information, it's like, wow, really? 95% of what I do is automatic? Wow, I hate that. But he's
Right.
right. What my plan is for tomorrow is just the same as it was yesterday. Ouch, I hate this. So what do I do about it? And then you gave something to do, something small, something simple. What happens when I have a little bit of free time? This is a chance I get to choose. So I'm going to choose to do something different. It didn't have to be huge. It was just different. It was intentional. I didn't automatically reach for the remote. I didn't automatically reach for my phone. I made a choice. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to fill in the blank,
Right.
whatever that new thing is. But I agree with you, when we are intentional and we make some choices about what we do rather than just going with those ruts in the road, it frees us to be able to make some additional choices. Maybe then it might be, I mean, we're not talking about dealing with hard things yet. All we're
Right.
talking about is let's just notice the ruts and let's just sidestep them a little bit.
Yeah. And I love that you're using the word choice because to me, if people would replace time management with choice management, that is more true. Like time is a constant. It's always moving. It never stops. It's the one thing we never get back. It's a fleeting resource. but we all have choice management. And knowing that we're all operating on the same playing field of time, that we put too much emphasis on this, whether it's work-life balance, whether it's all this stuff, it's all time constrained. I want you to think of this through the lens of choice management. And like, again, the freedoms we have, especially in this country, the true freedoms we have are freedom of thought and then freedom of choice. And so you get to choose what you're going to do. And every choice has a consequence, positive, negative, neutral. But it's every choice we make has a consequence. And once we can start thinking through those things and understanding it through that lens, again, it changed it for me when I learned about this, of like, oh, yeah, I just have the choice to not do this thing that I normally would habitually do right here. And I'll catch myself sometimes like, yeah, right now is when I'm like, okay, I'm going to go sit in my recliner and grab the remote. And right when I'm about to do that, I'm like, you know what? I'm actually going to go sit on the back patio and I'm just going to sit outside and I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm not going to turn the TV on. And I'm just going to do that for 15 minutes. And that's something that breaks up my routine. It gives me power of like, I just chose to break the cycle. That feels good, right? I get a little oxytocin, maybe a little boost of like connection to myself because I just chose myself over something that I would normally do. And there's freedom in that. And it's a thought disruption, a pattern disruptor, but think of it going forward as choice management instead of time management, and see how that changes for you.
Hey, that was brilliant and amazing. I love it. Just 15 minutes. I'm
Yeah.
just going to do something different. Okay, so now let's take this lifestyle choice, our choice management,
Yep.
and now let's apply it to I have just had a rough day. Maybe I'm in a toxic relationship. Maybe I'm in some sort of trigger situation
Mhm.
where I'm not safe with me. Is there a way that I can use this choice management idea in what might be an emergency situation for myself?
Yeah, which is probably one of the hardest things for people to do. But if you do not feel safe with yourself, the best thing you should do, again, my opinion, is not be alone and also separate yourself from the toxic person that is activating these things within you. And so I think it's important that you also, I'm all for like calls to actions and audits and inventories and all this, Linda. So I would say do an audit of your life currently as it is. If something bad were to happen tomorrow, who is the first person you would call? And would you call them in a virtual way, FaceTime, or would you physically be able to spend time with them? And start thinking through the lens of like, okay, this is my emergency contact person, right? Not like on a medical form, but like when things are really going on and I need somebody, do I have someone I can call? Some people are going to sit right there and think like, no, I don't, which validates this idea that I'm alone. And when people are in crisis, it's very easy for them to feel like they're alone. And this event or situation is isolated. No one's going to understand, which is only going to intensify their suffering. And so that would be like the first step is don't wait for the crisis to happen. Build your community, build a supportive community while things are going well, not because you need them, but because you want that. And one day you might need them. And I would say, look at your sphere of influence. Like, do you have three solid people? Again, this isn't a numbers game, right? Don't think of this as social media. Like, oh, I have 5,000 followers. Yeah, no one really cares. Not all 5,000 of those people are going to show up if you need them. But do you have three real solid relationships in your life that know who you are and that you could express or confront or vent to without judgment, and they would just hold space for you? That to me would be the number one thing that if you're coming home after a long day, you're in a toxic place, would be create separation as safely as possible, even if it's a phone call, even if it's a text. Obviously, you got to keep yourself safe always, but spend time with people. I think if we think of this as human beings are energy, right? That's all we are, right? We'll take it quantum here for a moment. Human beings are just energy. And there are certain people when they get in your space, your bubble, you know that it's like a vampire, right? Their energy sucks. Like this person is draining, they're exhausting. And then there's people that get in your space where you're like, whoa, my energy just shifted. This feels good. Like I like this person. They have light to them. This is fun. Know what your energy is, but then also think about the people you're allowing into your space. And if you only are surrounding yourself with people that have negative energy and they're just complaining about everything, and, the government's terrible and the president's horrible and my husband's horrible, my wife's terrible, I hate my kids, my job stinks, and it's just complaints on complaints, that's a very, very dangerous, dark place to be in. But if you have people that are willing to challenge you and say, like, yeah, hey, I get it. You don't love your job and your relationship isn't ideal. And look at all the things you have to be grateful for, right? Like life is incredibly beautiful because, like, look where we are right now. We're walking in this park and like the birds are chirping and whatever, right? It's about becoming just acutely aware of what is real in this time and moment instead of just amassing evidence to confirm your bias that everything is terrible. And so having people in your circle that'll challenge you, and give you an alternative perspective, I think is a great solution to that.
Okay, that was amazing. And I would recommend for anyone who's listening, write that down and let's do that now. And I appreciated that you said when we're in a good place is the time to be thinking about
Right.
who has my back, who is safe, who can I go to, who lifts me, who is willing to support me, because we have people like that. And we have hopefully friends, family, that sort of thing. We also have professional people we can go to, but we all have someone somewhere we can go to. But like you mentioned, when we're in a dark place, our mind goes blank and it's, I have no one, I have nothing. And I think it matters that that we're thinking clearly when we prepare ourselves to say, hey, I need some help. I'm not safe. So that was just amazing. I also really appreciated when you gave the example, this hypothetical situation where someone's, maybe needs a chance to vent. I hate my job.
Mhm.
I hate this. This is terrible. And the person is listening and saying, I get it. And the word and is almost magical because if you say, but it
Yeah.
feels like it invalidated
Right.
everything that they just said. You weren't listening to what they said. You didn't think that it mattered. But when you say yes, and here are some good things, then all of a sudden our minds open a little bit
Right.
with the word and. It's like, yeah, things can be hard and we can have things that are good.
Right.
It doesn't have to be black or white. It doesn't have to be all bad or all good. It doesn't have to be perfect in order to be wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, so again, just as an invitation to think through, and I kind of say this tongue in cheek a little bit, but if someone's, I think we catastrophize way too often. And I have a hard time if someone genuinely is like, oh, I had a bad day. I'm like, did you really have a bad day or you had a bad 30 minutes or a bad 2 hours? Because as soon as we go to bad day, based on like, well, I needed next Tuesday off, but my boss denied it. And I got the email saying you can't have next Tuesday off. Well, if that one thing ruined your whole day, then I think you lost perspective, right? Because for me right away, and again, I don't do this to be mean or cruel, but if someone's like, I had a bad day, right away, I'm like, well, like, where did you sleep last night? Confused. They look at me and they're like, well, in my bed. I'm like, oh, so you have a house, and then you're gainfully employed that allows you to pay for your house, and you have a job, and so you have health insurance and benefits and a paycheck coming in. You have all this stuff, but yet this one thing happened and suddenly you had a bad day. And then what happens is another bad moment happens tomorrow or maybe 2 days from now, and it's like, oh, I've had such a bad week. And like, oh, it's just been a rough month. And I think again, when people are in crisis or suffering, there's some value for some reason, and I get it because I've done this for a lot of my life, I assure you. So this is not me like claiming to be better than anybody. I used to be the king of this, I assure you. I'd wear like a Flavor Flav size clock of victimization around my chest of like, woe is me, woe is me. But now, as a 43-year-old that's been in therapy for 13 years and has done a lot of work, I live my life by this mantra, which is everything is my fault. And it gives me complete ownership and power of when things are going really well in my life, it's because I'm doing the things required of me. When things are not going well, it's because I'm not doing the things required of me. And I don't give power to anyone else to influence my life because I understand choice management. And so it's like, and I have a very, very aggressive gratitude practice every single day where when I wake up, I ask myself three grounding questions. Where am I? Like physically, why am I here? Who contributed to me being here in this moment? I travel a lot for work, right? So I leave Thursday to go to Kentucky, and then Sunday I fly to Cape Cod. And so, like next week when I wake up, it's like, why? Where am I? Cape Cod. Why am I here? To give a keynote to a group of a few hundred crisis negotiators in the Northeast. Who contributed to this? The guy who hired me to come do this. And then I go right into my gratitude practice. Three things in the last 24 hours they can never repeat. And it forces me to find the good every single day. And I start my mornings this way. So then I know I'm going to get a bad email. I'm going to get one of my employees might quit. A client is canceling a contract. We just lost a bunch of money. That stuff is going to keep happening. But because I've armed myself for the day, I'm like, you can't take my joy. Right? Like, yeah, I might not be happy because happiness is based on happenings, but I promise you, you can't take my joy because I've rooted myself in like what is true. And I have a lot to be grateful for, but it's taken me a lot of work and a lot of introspection and self-awareness to get to this place. And so I just want that to be like a message of hope for people of no matter how dark it seems right now, like there is a lot of freedom and beauty on the other side of that suffering. If you just are willing to put in the work, build a community, do the hard things, ask yourself the hard questions, and then just commit to doing the things required of you. A big, beautiful life is on the other side of that if you're willing to do it.
That was amazing. I just want to hit pause, repeat. Listen to this over and over again. That message was powerful on so many levels. And I'm not sure how much I want to get into it because we could talk about it for hours.
Yeah.
That was good. Golden
Thanks.
nuggets loaded. So I do want to make sure that I bring up the idea that there is freedom on the other side of this. When we started this conversation, the thought of that feels so overwhelming is I would rather die
Mm-hmm.
than feel these uncomfortable feelings.
Yep.
And so it matters very much that people have the hope that if we can go through these feelings, go through this thought process, that on the other side, there is freedom, there is power, there is joy, joy that can't be taken away. It must be worth it. In order for me to want to do something hard, I got to know that it's worth it, and I've got to know that I can do it. And so that is our message today. It is worth it. You can do it. And we
Yep.
invite people to have the courage to be able to look inside instead of just outside, because that takes a tremendous amount of courage. Joe, this has been amazing. Is there anything else
Thank you.
you want to make sure that we cover before we close today?
Yeah, I would just say quickly that your suffering matters. And when you get on the other side of it, you will be able to believe this statement to be true, which is one I believe right now, which is I've learned to become grateful for the things I wish never happened. And we don't want the hard things to happen. But when they do, I have a tattoo on my arm that says amor fati. It's a Latin phrase of love of fate. I truly believe in this life, we live in a perfect universe filled with imperfect people. If something is happening to you, it is very likely happening for you. And you can either learn the lesson from it or keep the pain in it. But I'd rather learn the lessons. And then once you get on the other side of that suffering and find gratitude, that's where the power is because now you've walked through that fire so that you can help somebody else walk through theirs. And that to me is what the human experience is. It's about connection and it's about realizing that no single person is going through any experience alone because other people have walked through this. And so shall you. And it's just doing the work required of you so that you can be a better servant for the next person when they face their trials. And so, yeah, I would just love to end with that, Linda, as a hopefully a message of hope for your audience that your suffering does matter. It is valid. And when you can learn to become grateful for it, the things we wish never happened, there's a lot of beauty and we can turn those scabs into scars. There's a lot of hope on that side of it.
Thank you. That
Thank
was
you.
fantastic. I appreciate you visiting with me today.
Of course. Thank you so much.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Winston Churchill. He said, "Never, never, never give up." Today, I invite our listeners to never give up on ourselves and on helping others. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for tuning in to Linda's Corner podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends to help us inspire even more listeners. Be sure to visit hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free and affordable resources to help you overcome life's challenges. And explore healingbreathworkdetox.com, where you'll find transformative tools for deep inner healing and lasting change. Also, don't forget to check out my books, Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. Your journey to hope, healing, and happiness starts here.